The Buddha's strategy to renew your purpose. Samsaranta bhava. That's how the Buddha describes the course of the mind. It basically means wandering on from one state of becoming to another. We have a desire, and then around that desire we see a world in which that desire might be fulfilled. Then we take on an identity in that world. This is how we go from one thought world to another in the course of the day. It's also how we go from one life to another. So if you want to understand the process of what happens at rebirth, look at what the mind is doing right now as it moves from one state to another to another. You realize that you can get involved in some pretty negative states if you're not careful. Especially at the moment of death, you get desperate. You'll jump at anything. So you want to train the mind so that it's not desperate, so that it has more control over the process. This is why the Buddha traced the causes in the mind that lead to becoming. As he said, whatever craving leads to becoming is going to lead to suffering. You can trace it back all the way to a process that the Buddha calls fabrication. Sankhara is the Pali term. These are the things we do to put together our experience of the present moment. We have raw material coming in from the past. The things we did, said, or thought in the past that are like seeds sprouting right now. And in that field of seeds, we have our choice as to which ones we want to pay attention to, which ones we water with our attention. Then we have our intentions in the present moment that put together those potentials and turn them into an actual experience, like right now. You're focused on the breath. The fact that you have this body sitting here comes from past actions. Some of the actions are pretty recent, others go way back, but you can do things with the potentials that they're yielding here right now. The breath is one such potential. You can breathe long, you can breathe short, fast, slow, heavy, light. No one is forcing you to breathe in any particular way. This is one area where we still have our freedom. So take advantage of it, because the way you breathe will have an impact on the pleasure or pain you feel right now. You can breathe in ways that are tight and constrictive. You can breathe in ways that are open, free-flowing. You'll notice, though, as you focus in on the breath, that there are other aspects of the process of fabrication that go along with it. The Buddha outlines three altogether. There's bodily fabrication, which is the in and out breath. Verbal fabrication, which is, in technical terms, directed thought and evaluation. In simple terms, it's basically the way you talk to yourself, what you focus on, what you pay attention to, and what you tell yourself about what you're paying attention to, the questions you ask, the comments you make. That's verbal fabrication. Then there's mental fabrication, which is composed of perceptions and feelings. Perceptions are the images you have in mind to name things, identity things, recognize things, remember things. Feelings are feeling tones, not emotions so much as just the tone of the feeling. Pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain. It's through these activities that we shape the present moment. It's also through these activities that we meditate. In teaching us how to meditate, the Buddha's actually giving us an alternative way of shaping the present moment. You look at his teachings, and they're basically instructions on how to fabricate well. After all, the path is a path of fabrication. Right view is something you fabricate. You put it together with perceptions and thoughts. Concentration, you fabricate out of all the three types of fabrication. All the factors in between are also fabricated one way or another. The Buddha even gives you instructions on how to breathe. Breathe in a way, he says, where you're sensitive to the whole body. Breathe in a way where you calm bodily fabrication. Before you calm it down, breathe in a way that gives rise to a sense of fullness and refreshment. Breathe in a way that gives rise to a sense of pleasure. Breathe in and out sensitive to mental fabrications, the perceptions and feelings that accompany the breath, the perceptions that help you to stay with the breath. Then breathe in a way that calms those fabrications down as well. Breathe in a way that gladdens the mind. Breathe in a way that concentrates the mind. Breathe in a way that releases the mind. So even in something as simple as how to breathe, the Buddha gives instructions. The same with how to talk to yourself. All the different suttas are instructions telling you that this is a good way to think about this topic. That's a good way to think about that topic. And as for the perceptions, you may notice that the Buddha uses a lot of analogies, as when he talks about goodwill, saying that just as a mother would protect her only child, you should protect your goodwill. You hold the image in mind that this is how diligent you should be in protecting your goodwill, no matter what happens, just as a mother who has only one child would be really diligent in protecting that child. That's a good perception to hold in mind as you shape your experience, so you read through the canon and realize you're getting instructions in how to fabricate the present moment in a skillful way. Like right now, you're focused on the breath. You're talking to yourself about what ways of breathing feel good and what ways of breathing don't feel good, and how you can induce the ones that do feel good. You have a perception in mind of where the breath's coming in. You can play with that a lot. If you have pains in the chest, you can have a perception of the breath coming in the back. Pains on both sides of the body. Perceive the breath coming in both sides of the body to loosen up the pain, alleviate the pain. Tightness here, tightness there. Think of the breath flowing through those areas of tightness, so you learn how to breathe, learn how to perceive the breath, how to talk to yourself about the breath in ways that give rise to a sense of well-being. That's the feeling tone you want right now. When the Buddha defines the various levels of right concentration, he starts out with a feeling tone, pleasure and refreshment, or just pleasure or equanimity. Those are the things we're working on. As you get more and more sensitive to how these processes put together a state of concentration, it gives you insight into how you create other states of becoming as you go through the day. And when you know how to create them, you also know how to take them apart. This is important because we can get ourselves into some pretty negative states: greed, anger, delusion, fear, anxiety. These are all things we put together by the way we breathe, by the way we talk to ourselves, by the perceptions we hold in mind and the feelings we focus on. So you want to learn alternative ways, better ways, for how to do this. The important thing is that you keep in mind the principle that what you experience right now is partly due to past karma, but not totally due to past karma. In other words, there is some wiggle room, you might say, in the present moment. All too often, we hear the Buddha's teachings boiled down to one word: let go or accept. But the Buddha was not a one-word kind of person, and his teachings are not one-word teachings. For example, with acceptance, the only places I know where he uses the word accept are: 1, when he accepts invitations, and 2, when there's a death in the family or a death of someone you love. He says that you have to learn how to accept that fact. If you try to deny it, you're going to cause yourself lots of suffering. But there are a lot of areas where the Buddha doesn't mention accept or not accept at all. His own way of boiling things down to the simplest terms is that skillful actions should be developed, unskillful ones should be abandoned. It's not a one-word teaching. It starts with a distinction, and it's a distinction that requires sensitivity, because what's going to be skillful in any situation is going to depend on what you see happening in that situation, how you understand it, and how perceptive you are. This sensitivity is something that's going to be developed over time as you practice. You can't say, well, I want to be skillful, and tomorrow, boop, there you are, skillful. As with any skill, it's going to take time. It requires patience, but at least you can keep that question in the mind. What would be the skillful thing to do right now? In his teachings to his son Rahula, he said to make it your intention that you're not going to harm anybody with what you do, or say, or think. If you see an intention arise in the mind, ask yourself, if I followed this intention, would it harm anybody? If you think it would, then you don't follow it. If you don't think it's going to cause any harm, then go ahead and do it. If you see that, when you're doing it, it actually does cause harm, you stop. If it's not causing harm, you can continue. When it's done, you're still not done. You look at the long-term results. If you see that what you thought was going to be okay was not, you actually did harm somebody, you learn from that. Talk it over with someone you trust. Make up your mind that you're not going to repeat that mistake, and then keep on training. If you see that you didn't cause any harm, then take joy in that fact. That way, you give yourself encouragement to keep on training even more. That's the basic principle. Based on that principle, when situations come up, you can look at what you're doing, and you may see that certain mental states are getting in the way. Say there's anger. Something wrong is happening. It's either injustice, or someone's been disrespectful, discourteous, and you're angry about it. Now, the Buddha doesn't say, well, just accept the situation, or just accept the anger, or try to accept both, which would be really difficult. He says, in effect, look at what you're doing that's making it hard to see what's the skillful thing to do. And that's the anger. If you can get the anger out of the way, then you can look at the situation and decide, does this require a response, or did I misperceive it to begin with? When you see that it does require a response and the anger is out of the way, you're in a much better position to come up with a response that's skillful. So you look at that anger. The important thing is that you learn how to look at it and not feel that you're totally surrounded or consumed by it. There's part of your mind that's not angry. Identify with that part. That's the part that's going to see you through. Then you think about those different kinds of fabrication. The anger itself is fabricated. The way you breathe is aggravating it. What you're telling yourself about the situation is probably aggravating it. Even the perceptions, the images you hold in mind can be aggravating it. So you have to learn how to engage in other fabrications. Learn how to breathe in a way that calms you down, that doesn't feel so tight. If you allow yourself to keep breathing in a way that feels tight in the stomach or tight in the chest, right there will be a sense you've got to get that anger out of your system. And for most people, getting it out of their system means yelling at somebody or doing something. But you realize that a much better way of getting it out is learning how to breathe in a more skillful way to dissolve the sense of tightness. And as you've been meditating, you've learned how to do that. This is why it's important that you don't just breathe any old way as you meditate. Learn how to be with your breath. Recognize ways of calming the breath down, releasing tension, so that you can use them when the anger comes. Then look at how you talk to yourself. The first thing you've got to remind yourself of is that anger can make you do really stupid things. This is one of the Buddha's frontline defenses when you feel anger, and it's really hard to feel goodwill for the other person. At the very least, you can tell yourself, if I act on my anger, I'm going to do stupid things. That's going to please my enemy. Do I want to please that person? No. This may not be the most skillful thought pattern. You're basically using spite to overcome anger, saying, okay, I'm going to overcome anger so that I don't please that person. But then you realize also that you're actually showing goodwill for yourself. Who wants to do stupid things? The problem is, when you're angry, things seem very clear. You tell yourself that you should clearly say this, you should clearly say that. But you have to remind yourself that's the clarity of tunnel vision. You're closing off large areas of your mind. That's a perception to hold in mind to pull you out of the anger. Then you learn to talk about the situation to yourself, perceive the situation in different ways, so that you're not aggravating the anger, but you're not lying about the situation either. You can calm yourself down. One of the ways of thinking that the Buddha recommends is that you say, this person has done something to displease me. He's harming me, harming somebody I love, or he's actually helping someone I hate. But what should I expect? This is the way the world is. Or, this person has already harmed me in the past, has harmed people I love, has helped people I hate. But what should I expect? Or, the same things may happen in the future. What should I expect? Finally, he says, don't get worked up about impossibilities. There's another place where he has you reflect on the nature of speech. There's kind speech and unkind speech, harsh speech and gentle speech, true/false. There are people who tell the truth, people who lie. This is the nature of human speech. This doesn't tell you just to give up and accept it. It's basically saying, this behavior that's got you angry is not all that outrageous. It's all over the world. The purpose of this line of thought is to remind yourself that, okay, this person is not doing anything extraordinarily bad, so it doesn't give you extraordinary rights to do whatever you want. You have to be careful and skillful in how you respond. You don't want to have the response that just keeps up the cycle of anger and keeps up the cycle of injustice. You want to act in a more considered way, a more skillful way, a way that actually gives long-term results. All too often, when anger comes in, we just want to get it off our chest. We don't really use our concern for what the results are going to be. That right there is blotting out whatever sense of shame or compunction you may have. Shame here, being a healthy sense of shame, the opposite of shamelessness. It's not the shame that's the opposite of pride. The Buddha does have you nurture a sense of pride that you're a skillful person and trying your best to be as skillful as you can. But he also says that shamelessness is not going to help anything at all. Compunction is thinking about the consequences of the action and not wanting to do anything unskillful. Those two qualities you want to maintain. So you can't just tell yourself, well, I need to express my anger regardless of the consequences. Let the chips fall where they may. If you really want to improve the situation, you've got to think about how to do it skillfully. And you've learned how to do that because you've learned how to deal with these three kinds of fabrication in your meditation. You've also learned how to think about the potential you have for anger, the potential you have for anxiety, the potential you have for whatever unskillful habits you may have. Think about them ahead of time. All too often, we think that meditation is simply a matter of focusing on what you're doing in the present moment. But if you know that you have some unskillful habits, you can use the meditation time to think about them so that in the future, you don't fall for whatever the mind tells itself as they come in. You need to have alternative ways of talking to yourself, alternative ways of breathing. alternative perceptions to hold in mind. So sometimes it is a useful use of your meditation time to think about these things ahead of time. It's part of right effort, preventing unskillful states from arising, or if they have arisen, learning how to get rid of them as quickly as you can. So there are times when you meditate and you should think about the future. You know a difficult situation is going to come up. How are you going to get through that situation without doing something unskillful, so that you don't get overcome by anger and then are left with the results of having acted on anger without much thought? Think of new ways of breathing, talking to yourself, holding perceptions and feelings in mind. Thinking in terms of the Three Fabrications is a very useful way of analyzing what's going on in your mind. You learn it as you meditate, and then you take what you've learned as you meditate and you apply it to the rest of your life. This is one of the ways in which the meditation gets up off the cushion and actually helps with your life. Remember, the word for meditation in Pali is bhavana. It means to develop. Whatever good qualities you can develop in the mind, it's all part of meditation. Whether you're sitting here with your eyes closed or in the middle of an argument with somebody else, develop. Be skillful. Abandon unskillful qualities. In other words, keep these instructions in mind. This is one of the meanings of the word sarana. We say we take refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dhamma, refuge in the Sangha. And one of the ways we keep taking refuge in them is that we keep them in mind. That's another meaning of sarana. Things you remember. Always remember that the most important event in the world that should have an impact on everything you do, say, and think is the fact that the Buddha gained awakening through his own efforts. That's why that's the center of conviction. Being convinced of the Buddha's awakening. Then, look at everything you're going to do and say and think in light of the implications of that awakening. Don't just deal with concepts like not self or emptiness. Think of what his awakening means in terms of everything down to what to do when you get angry and how to act, how to think, how to breathe, what perceptions to hold in mind so that you can respond in a skillful way, day after day after day. That's when the Dhamma shows its real benefits, and you see that you really can depend on it as a refuge. Take nothing for granted. The Pali word samadhi, that we translate as concentration in English, is translated into Thai by the phrase tang jai man, which means to set your mind firmly on something. In this case, set your mind on what you're doing, what the mind is doing. Set your mind on one thing. Give it a purpose. That's one of the reasons why we have the chance every evening before the meditation, to remind ourselves of what our purpose is. Otherwise, as you meditate day in, day out, you begin to forget why you're doing it. And if you've hit a plateau, you start to expect that nothing's going to happen. Things get dull and dry. So you have to renew your vows in the same way they do with marriages sometimes, when they want to remind themselves that this is a relationship that they really want to keep going, and it has a lot of potential. So you have to remind yourself, you're here for a purpose. The mind needs a purpose. That's how it functions. As the Buddha said, we fabricate our experience for the sake of having form, feelings, perceptions, fabrications, consciousness, and then we use those things for the sake of happiness. So we have to remember why we're here. Keep that in the background, and then set your mind on doing what needs to be done to reach to that goal of happiness, of real happiness. Sometimes you hear about people saying that when the mind gets still, then you frame an intention, and things will magically happen in the mind. And it is true that when the mind is still, it can be very suggestible. But with really the important things in meditation, you can't simply set your mind say, okay, I want awakening tonight, or I want deep insights tonight. What you can say is, I want to focus on the breath. I want to be very sensitive to the breath. I want to make sure that all my conversation in the mind is about the breath and the mind's relationship to the breath. You want to set your mind on getting it into concentration. Remember that the factors of jhana fall into two sorts, those that are causes and those that are results. You can't focus on the results, although you keep them in the back of your mind. The things you really have to focus attention on are the causes: directed thought, evaluation, and singleness of preoccupation. Now, directed thought and evaluation are nothing mysterious or mystical. They're things you're doing all the time. To direct your thoughts means you choose a topic to think about. To evaluate means you make comments on it. You ask questions about it. The mind is doing this all the time. It's simply that now you've decided to take those activities and apply them to one thing: the mind's relationship to the breath. What can be done to make the mind more amenable to stay with the breath? What can be done to make the breath more comfortable and interesting for the mind? And then the singleness of preoccupation. You just keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. This one thing. Of course, the evaluation has a purpose. You want to make the breath comfortable because you want to create a sense of refreshment, a sense of ease for the mind. So what way of breathing would lead to that sense of refreshment and ease? What way of thinking about the breath would lead to that sense of refreshment and ease? This is where it's useful to perceive the breath as a full body process, something that can saturate all the nerves. That way, when the sense of ease comes, say, in the middle of the head or the middle of the chest, then you can think of it connecting up to all the nerves in other parts of the body. Ajahn Lee's image is of connecting electric wires throughout a wilderness, so that you have electricity wherever you want it. Once you have sense of well-being at any one spot, you can spread it around and then try to maintain it. Again, the directed thought and evaluation will help you maintain it by directing you to think about, how do I perceive of this energy? How do I manipulate the breath so I can maintain this sense of well-being? Where do I settle down? Where do I focus my main attention? Try to focus it on some of the crossroads of these different channels of breath in the body. Ajahn Lee lists some of them as the middle of the head, the palate, the base of the throat, the tip of the sternum, the spot just above the navel. Those are the main intersections. There are lots of other minor ones too. So when you focus on the different spots, what are the different results? The reason why we're getting the mind into concentration is that we want good results. We're trying to develop this sense of well-being so that we can see clearly more and more subtle things going on in the mind. Now there's a problem. When the sense of well-being comes, we tend to settle in there and just stay. It's like being a government official and you've been given a really comfortable residence to stay in so that you can do your work in ease. But you forget about the work and just hang out in your nice new digs. You begin to lose your sense of purpose. So here again, it's important to remember, it's all about seeing what the mind is doing right now. That's what the Four Noble Truths are all about. Actions you're doing in the present moment, some of which are leading to suffering, some of which are leading away from suffering. The Buddha gives you some pointers, but you've got to see for yourself. Exactly what do those pointers point to? What are you doing right now? Where is the craving right now that's leading to suffering? Where's the desire that leads away? You have to learn how to distinguish these things. That gives you something to look for. That gives you another purpose. The mind needs a purpose. Otherwise, it begins to blur out or to start looking for entertainment on the side. So there's the purpose in getting the mind to settle down, and there's a purpose in using the sense of well-being, the sense of concentration, to set your mind on getting some understanding about how you're creating suffering and how you don't have to. This is the purpose. It's what gives meaning to the meditation. Just as in our lives in general, we have to have a sense of purpose, a sense that we're making choices, and our choices have some impact on our experience, and we can learn how to control that. So you're going to control your attention and your intentions to try to understand, what do I do that's causing suffering? And here the word suffering, dukkha, can spread from heavy suffering to very light. This is a problem in the English language. We don't really have a word that corresponds to the full range of dukkha. I know some people who say, obviously there's suffering when the mind is outside of concentration, but there's no suffering when it's in concentration. But there is dukkha. There's stress, there's disturbance, along with the little movements of the mind that cause little bits of stress and disturbance here and there. You want to be able to see that, because if you don't see it in the small areas, in the subtle areas, then you're going to be a victim of the big ones. So you want to see, what am I doing right now? And what's the impact? And particularly, what is the mind doing right now? How is it talking to itself? There are different kinds of fabrication. Verbal fabrication is the big issue. How you talk to yourself, how you frame issues, and then how you comment on them. Your cravings are expressed in verbalization. Right view, right resolve, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, all the factors of the path. Those are also forms of verbalization. So, how are you talking to yourself? In some cases, the conversations can be very subtle, just little whispers here and there. So you want to be able to get the mind still enough to hear the whispering. This too gives you a purpose, tries to keep you focused. The question is, can you maintain your focus? Can you maintain your purpose even as things get very still? I talked to an anthropologist years back. He talked about how modern-day anthropologists, when they study a tribe, try to master all the different skills that the people of the tribe have mastered so that they can get an inside feel for the culture of the tribe. But one skill they found they had real trouble mastering is hunting, because hunting requires a lot of mental powers, concentration, a purposeful focus, alertness and mindfulness, remembering why you're there, so that as the mind gets still, it doesn't forget, doesn't get drowsy. You've got to learn how to maintain this balance, stillness and alertness together, and keep them purposeful. When you develop the same qualities in your meditation in the same way, you're sure to bag your insights. You can't set your mind on saying, tonight I'm going to get an insight. Just as the hunter can't say, tonight I'm going to get a particular animal. But you can say, I'm going to try to get the causes in line and maintain as consistent an alertness as I can. In this case, the verbal fabrication is there to encourage you, but at the same time, it itself becomes an object of inquiry, this mind talking to itself. Who is it talking to? Who's doing the talking? Why does there have to be talking? There's a little bit of talking required to get the mind to settle down, and then all you need is perception, mental fabrication, to keep you going. But then little comments will come in, here and there. Why? What are they doing? Who's talking to whom? Why is there this messaging system going on in the mind? It's learning how to ask questions like this that you take things apart. Your way of building up worlds of experience, your way of building up your own sense of your identity, comes out of little building blocks like this. If you don't see these things as individual building blocks, you're just going to take them for granted. That's what the lesson of all this is if you want to gain awakening, you have to learn not to take anything for granted. Don't take the breath for granted. Don't take the body for granted. Don't take your concentration or your perceptions or your insights for granted. They're all choices. Some of them skillful, some of them not. And you want to get the mind still enough and sensitive enough so it can see the little choices out of which the big ones are made. That's when the insights get really in. So set your mind on not taking the meditation for granted and see where it'll lead you.